Okay, so chapter 3, firing projectiles. This chapter is pretty fun. First and foremost, in step 1, we have to make sure that we have all of our motion actuators set up, and we do. I can test this out by going to camera, and in my standalone player, I can press start, and then I can press up, left, down, right. It goes any direction I want it to. So we've got it all set up. Perfect. Now we're going to make this guy fire. To do so, we have to first add a laser to our scene. So let's go on a completely different layer. Right now we're on this layer right here. You can see the orange dot. We want any one of these blank ones. So I'm just going to choose the one right next to it. I'm clicking on it. So now I have a completely blank layer. Alright, I can go back into my spaceship one at any time by clicking on this layer. But I'm going to go into this layer, completely blank. Now I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to highlight Mesh, and I'm going to add a UV sphere. And don't forget, if you've adjusted the view for whatever reason, you can press 7 and hold down Shift and the middle mouse wheel to drag it around to center it. Wonderful. So now in step 5, we're making sure we're in ortho view, and then we're pressing S and then Y to scale on the Y axis. Just like this. Okay, perfect. In step 6, it's just scaling it down, so press S and move your mouse inward. Your laser is going to look like that. You can adjust the size however you'd like. So perfect. Now we're going to add a material to this. So if you're in your game logic panel, which you should be, come down here to the properties panel and click on materials. You're going to add a new material, and then I'm just hovering over this line right here till I get the double arrow, and I'm dragging this up so I can see everything. I'm going to first pick the color of my laser. The diffuse is going to be right here. Because my ship is orange, I guess I'll make it some sort of greenish color. That looks good. And then I'm going to turn the intensity all the way up to 1. So then in step 10, I've got a bunch of settings that you can adjust and copy exactly if you'd like, or you can change and just experiment yourself. Either way is fine. So this is just kind of me messing around. I just made these settings up. So now I'm going on to step 11. That's all good. Now I'm hovering over this line and I'm dragging it down again. And then it's saying, so we go into our object panel or tab, and we're going to rename our sphere. Right now it's named sphere. In step 11, I'm calling it laser beam. So we'll keep that the same. Now we'll go back into our ship layer by clicking on the layer. So right here, this teeny tiny dot, just like that. And then I'm going to go into, from the game logic, I'm going to switch it to default. Now I want to make sure my cursor's in the center of my screen. It already is, but let's say it was over here. So now my cursor's over here. I want to put it in the center. Press Shift S and we'll say cursor to center. So now my cursor's in the center. Anything I add to the scene will spawn on this cursor right here. Alright, so I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to find the empty. I'm going to highlight empty and I'm going to select the arrows. So now if I go into wire mode, you can see I have arrows that are labeled Z, Y, and X. These are my 3 different axes in 3D space. So I'm gonna grab the green arrow. I'm gonna drag it forward till the empty is right in front of my ship, and I'm grabbing the blue arrow and I'm dragging it up a little bit. Okay, so there we go. Now we got a parent. We got to basically stick the empty to the ship. So while it's still selected, and if it's not selected, right click it, hold down Shift, and right click the ship as well. So now both of these are selected and the ship was selected last. Press Control P and we're going to select object, keep transform, or object. In the tutorial I say object. So now we select only the empty. There we go. We go back into our game logic up here, so switch default to game logic. My empty is still selected, as you can see. Let's see. Go into our laser beam. So laser, layer 2. Okay, and I guess we'll add the laser functionality first. Select the laser, and then we're going to add an always sensor, an and controller, and a simple motion actuator. So just a motion actuator. Hook these all up. We're going to make our laser travel along the y-axis at a rate of 2 units. And they're all linked together. Good. So now go back into the spaceship layer. Right click to select your empty. This is where we'll add our functionality for our empty. In step 25, I'm going to add a keyboard sensor. There it is. I'm going to select this for at first spacebar. We will switch this up though. So I'm going to select and I'm going to say spacebar. So now every time we press the spacebar, something will happen. We'll add an and controller. And then the actuator, we're going to say edit object. And the edit object type is add object. So basically every time we add we hit the spacebar, we're going to add an object to the scene. That object that we're going to add is going to be our laser beam, and the laser beam is going to spawn on this empty. Okay, perfect. So that takes us all the way up to step 30. So now we want to go into Blender Game Renderer, which you're already in. If you're not, select it, Blender Game. And now we go into our camera panel and select the camera. If we hit start, we can still control our guy with our arrow keys, and if we press spacebar, it fires a projectile. Awesome. So that works. So now you should have a spaceship that you can move with the arrow keys and fire. Okay, so in chapter 4 we'll be creating a basic enemy for this guy to fight.